pictures that we're going to see are from a show that we had here at Brookhaven. The show was called As I See / Saw It, which means that whatever you see is the way I saw it, or maybe still see it. But is it art? And that's a question. The subjects are all filtered through me. Some are obviously from my life. Others are about happenings in the world that occupy my thoughts. In this mix of autobiography, politics, pretty flowers, landscapes, and colors might be the heart of the matter. I start a painting with a clear image in mind. It will be easy to do, just as I see it. I begin, and then things unforeseen happen, and it's not easy. The struggle begins. The painting makes its own demands, and I follow. On and on we go, and then it's over. Done. No, not yet. Yes, now. Maybe this is all, and so on and so on. I'm Barbara, and I come from Detroit, from a family that had some extra anomalies. All families have anomalies, but ours was extra because my older brother could not see very well. He could hardly see 2 feet in front of him. And he used me for his exploits outside of the house. I could see, and even in the house, I was a valuable person to him because I could see. And he was 5 years older than I, and I was willing to oblige, which I did. But I think I became a looker. I looked for him. And then there were only 2 possibilities for him in the world of exercise or outside activities. One was riding a horse, the other was swimming. And so we did both of those things. And I was introduced to the swimming pool one day when I was about 3, and I do remember this big room full of water. I couldn't get over it. Water. And then the mothers were sitting in some sort of a corral behind. And the man that was in charge picked me up, kind of cradled me, I think, and then set me gently down into the water. And I thought it was great. I just took to it, and I became a swimmer. Yeah, so did we all, but I excelled. And the family and looking and being an athlete all contribute to the sort of things that I have painted and done and been aware of what was going on around me as far as color and stuff. I don't know if I knew what was happening most of the time, but that's a different story. I could start with a picture of this maid chasing my brother. They've been in the kitchen, and now they're in the living room, or they're really toward the entrance of the house. And my sister and I are watching, while the maid, who has been led to this murderous position by my brother, I'm sure he provoked her in a terrible way. He had nothing else to do except tease the girls or tease the maid. Now she's holding a cast iron frying pan. Whatever happened, I don't know whether she hit him with it or what. I can't remember, but it was shocking sight to me and to my sister, Joan. This painting here has me lying down, and there's barbed wire under me and sort of a huge incision from my head right down to between my legs. I've been split open, and that's how I felt. There was a threat that the boys might be taken from me. And there are the boys, Louis on the right, Rob in the middle, Charlie at the end. They didn't get taken away, but it was a horrific time, and that's how I remember it, screaming and in shock. This man has connections, and I can't say too much about him, but we all know what it is. Here I am, about to plunge, about to dive, that is. I was an exhibition diver on a 3-meter board. But this thing is 40 feet high, and I can't tell you how many meters that is, but it's plenty. And it's in the Detroit River. You can see in the back one of the big tugs, not tugs, freight boats that went through. Apparently Detroit carried more, the river carried more freight than any other river. This is the family gathered for a Friday night dinner, and it was always quite a nice affair, and we children were included in it, which we weren't in most meals. And my mother was an unusually beautiful woman, and I have not made her beautiful, and maybe that's something I have to think about, but I'm going to try to make her beautiful after the show. I'm going to work on her. That's me in the red dress, and the two boys, two brothers across, and my sister next to me. This one's called Let Me In, and we were meant to stay out in the yard, the three of us, Jimmy, Joan, and me, my older brother, my sister and I, and the dogs. We were meant to stay in the yard until we were asked to come in. The only way we could get in was to say that it was an emergency, had to get to the toilet. So I am announcing that it's an emergency and kicking the door and doing what I can to get in. I think if we were not allowed to go out, we would do the same thing on the other side of the door. But it didn't feel good to be out. And if you remember about the milk bottles being on the back porch, that's part of the scene. This is the occasion of my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary in Philadelphia. It was held at the University of Pennsylvania, I think, downtown. They had an auditorium. And when I first painted the picture, I left my grandmother out of it, and somebody suggested that that wasn't very nice. But my relationship was really with my grandfather. I admired him, liked him, loved him, and here he is holding my hand, not my sister's hand. And there's my brother down with the other, sort of grown up. This was a wonderful night in my life. Here is Charlie, my youngest son, in green, and his son, his oldest son, in red, and his younger son in yellow. Somehow or other, they always chose the same chair to sit together. They're very close, very nice, wonderful little family. The little one now is 25, so it's outdated, and I think they don't sit in the same chair anymore. This is a picture of a friend of mine who was very ill, but somehow very beautiful. And that's all I can say about it. If I've made it look that way, that's fine. If not, it's a good souvenir. Driving through Mexico, Egypt, Turkey, maybe some other places, I would see people on the road, and they seemed to have very few possessions, if any, and nothing around them that signified that there would be a place for them to live or be or do anything. And then there was the question of refugees. The whole world is moving from place to place and from scene to scene, and there are millions of refugees. And I started painting them. I painted quite a few refugee scenes. This is a plane tree that was outside where we lived on Memorial Drive. I saw these trees frequently, daily, many times. And they began to mean something more to me than just a tree. I can't tell you what, but something of life that was stable and wonderful. Also on Memorial Drive was this old cherry tree. Apparently it's been hit by trucks as they go by, but someone else has been able to fill it with like bandages to hold it up, and it resists dying. It is there, and it does flower in the spring. Much talk about Armageddon, and no wonder with hydrogen bombs and so on around. But this was my thought of a young woman left standing amid the ruins. The dunes in Provincetown are obviously sand-colored. However, there was an excitement to the dunes that day that called for color. There was wind, and maybe it was from inside me, but those are the dunes of Provincetown, yeah, in the National Seashore. I borrowed this little arrangement of tulips from the people downstairs who arrange flowers for us every day. They're gorgeous. And this was my interpretation of that particular arrangement. A bridge in France. I can't remember where, but I loved it. It was beautiful. I think I saw this house on the way to Provincetown. It's in Truro. But since no one else has ever seen it, who go by it every day, I have to say, too bad for them. I'm sure it was there. I'm not going to give it up. This man came to the studio to pose. I put him on the seashore. He was a terrible man who was crazy, and we had to call the police. But on the other hand, he was a great model. And I put him on the beach, nice and calm. He's all right. I took this from a black and white photograph that my son Rob had taken, which spoke of the bleakness and monotony of the landscape. I couldn't really stand it, so I gave him some pink, red umbrellas and a blue car, and I jazzed it up. That's all it is. These are two pastels. The top one is looking from the porch of a wonderful reconstruction job that Rob did, Rob Postal, my son. And I was just, so much of it is what Katona looks like to me. This is a park in Chicago. If you go down from the university into Jackson Park, this is part of that. It's a huge park, but this is just a little part of it. I saw the original image for this in the New York Times, a black and white. The men crowded into a bus. These are Taliban men, and I think the importance was that there was no jail. There were no jails to put them in. There was no other place to put them. So they put them in the bus and locked them up. And I tried to imagine these guys just sitting around there, which is what I painted. We had been to Tiananmen Square a few months before I started this painting. I was very impressed with its space, and there was a living quality about it, although it was bigger than any space like that I'd ever seen. And there were people using it, kind of being there. Now, the proportions are not correct. This is not photorealism. This is some kind of an idea that I had of what it looked like and what it was. The terrible troubles happened there while I was painting this, so it just came to the end, and I thought I would put some of that into the painting, and these blue marks underneath are kind of like nails or something. And then I just want to suggest that it was there, but for me it was peaceful and beautiful. Painting called Pre-Op. It's really a pastel, not a painting. And it shows a skull, my skull actually, with something in the front as big as a large lemon or a small orange that had to be removed. And there I am after it was removed wasn't funny. It was painful, but it was done. And I knew who I was and where I was, which was important. Okay. This is a view of a breakwater that is half fiction, half reality. There's some little houses along the way. There's some trees. There are inlets and water. I did with it what I wanted. We spoke of the plane trees on Memorial Drive. These are 2 plane trees. And I said there was something spiritual about them. And in these 2 trees, I felt that I could use the word cathedral. Philip Guston is probably internationally saluted and known. And he taught here in Boston for years, and still most people do not know who he is, even people that are interested in art. Well, this is homage to Philip Guston, and in my homage, I have made a very non-threatening kind of arrangement. His are much more serious and sometimes very black, but he uses things like the cigar, the heels, in cartoon fashion, and the clock and the naked light bulb. All of these things are part of the way he works. And I have made it lighthearted. He is not a lighthearted painter. I was in Paris and got myself admitted to the École de Beaux-Arts. I chose a studio that was doing sculpture. And this is the sculpture that was displayed in the little museum on the Seine. And it is the same woman 3 times that I walked around and got her on different sides. And I think it's the 3 graces. And there's not much more to say about it, except that I felt that that it was successful. What I wanted to do happened, and that's something. It was done in clay, cast in plaster, and then painted. Here are 3 more ladies, all the same lady again, and I cannot call them the 3 graces, but they are three efforts in variations on a theme, I should call it, because of the different color combinations, different attitude, and still the same lady in the same pose. A bridge at night, and I associate it with Harrisburg. I had never seen Harrisburg, and it's full of beautiful bridges and river. And I don't think anybody ever told me that that's what goes on there, but that's it. That's what I remember. A composition with no explanation. It is my favorite. It says yield, and that's my name. And otherwise, it's go Miro. And I think it's funny, and I like it, and I feel it's well done. I'm very pleased with it. We had a wonderful model, and I call this picture At the Bar. It's where dancers go to exercise, to prepare themselves. We had a model that inspired this picture of these women. It's all one woman again. I just make the best use if I can of the model. If you have comments or questions, I would like to hear from you. Bye-bye.